This is a true survival story. In 2012, Mexican fisherman José Salvador Alvarenga drifted across the Pacific Ocean for over a year after a storm destroyed his boat. Morning arrived without warning signs. The Pacific lay stretched to the horizon like brushed steel, flat, wide, unreadable. Fishing boats moved in slow routines along the Mexican coast, engines humming, gulls circling with mechanical patience. It was the kind of morning that convinces men the sea is predictable. That experience equals safety, that today will resemble yesterday. José Salvador Alvarenga had lived most of his life on water like this. Salt in the air, diesel on his hands, the quiet mathematics of nets, currents, and luck. Fishing was not adventure. It was repetition. Go out, work, return. The ocean was not an enemy. It was a workplace. Beside him stood Ezequiel Cordoba, younger, less seasoned, carrying the restless energy of someone still new enough to believe hardship has limits. This was a short trip. A routine run offshore, ice in the cooler, gear checked, fuel sufficient. No one spoke in dramatic tones. No one looked at the horizon with suspicion, because danger rarely announces itself in advance. It waits for permission. They pushed off from the coast, the shoreline shrinking into a thin brown line behind them. The boat cut forward through low swells, its hull slapping lightly against the surface. Overhead, clouds drifted in loose formations. Nothing organized, nothing threatening. Just sky doing what sky does. Hours passed. Nets went out. Work began. The rhythm of labor took over, hands moving automatically, attention divided between catch and weather. But far out on the open Pacific, changes do not happen like doors slamming. They happen like pressure building. The wind shifted first, not stronger, just different. A subtle redirection. Then the swells lengthened. The surface lost its earlier stillness, as if something vast had stirred beneath it. Alvarenga noticed. Of course he did. Men who live by the sea develop a second sense for its moods. But experience can be a trap. A lifetime of surviving ordinary storms teaches a dangerous lesson. This one will pass too. Clouds thickened at the edges, dark undersides forming like bruises spreading across the sky. The air grew heavier, the kind that presses against the lungs. Cordoba glanced outward more often now. The horizon no longer looked empty. It looked distant. Still, they worked. Because turning back early means lost money, lost time. And fishermen learn to bargain with risk the way gamblers bargain with odds, just a little longer. One more set, one more drift. The first hard gust came without buildup, a slap of wind that rattled the gear and twisted the boat slightly off its line. The water darkened, texture roughening, small white crests forming where none had been minutes earlier. The sea had stopped pretending. Alvarenga looked at the sky again. This time he did not see clouds. He saw walls. And in that instant, before the first real wave struck, before the engine would fail, before the world would reduce to water and sky, there was a quiet realization, too small to speak aloud. They had already gone too far. But this was only the beginning. Storms at sea do not arrive. They assemble. The sky did not darken all at once. It condensed, layer by layer, until the light itself felt heavy. Wind began to move with direction, not randomness, pushing long lines of water into rising corridors of swell. The Pacific, so wide and open hours before, narrowed into a system with intent. Alvarenga did what seasoned fishermen do. He turned the bow toward the angle that offered the best chance of riding it out. Not escape, just survival. The boat climbed, dropped, climbed again. Each descent struck harder than the last, wood and fiberglass groaning under stress that had never been tested like this. Rain hit sideways, not falling, driving. Visibility collapsed into gray sheets. The horizon vanished, erasing orientation. Up and down replaced north and south. Cordoba gripped the side rail, eyes wide, searching the storm for instructions that never came. His world had shrunk to the size of the boat, and the boat was shrinking by the minute. Then came the sound every mariner fears, a change in the engine's voice, A cough, a stutter, a vibration that did not belong. Alvarenga moved fast, hands steady out of habit, not confidence. He checked lines, cleared water, adjusted throttle. The engine answered with one last surge of resistance, then silence. Not gradual failure, a clean final stop. The boat fell sideways into a trough, waves now free to push it wherever the system demanded. Power had not just been lost. Control had. Cordoba shouted something, words torn apart by wind. Alvarenga reached for the radio, shielding it with his body as water swept across the deck. He keyed the mic, voice tight but controlled, sending coordinates that might already be outdated. Static answered first, then distortion, then nothing but open-air noise. The storm had cut their voice from the world. Lightning flickered inside the clouds, turning the sky into a brief X-ray of its own violence. For seconds at a time, the ocean revealed its true scale. Mountains of moving water, rising and collapsing with mechanical indifference. Between flashes, there was only darkness and impact. They bailed. They braced. They waited for it to pass. Because storms pass. That is the rule men tell themselves. Hours blurred into physical endurance, muscles burned, hands numbed. Rain filled every container, every fold of clothing. The boat, built for work, not punishment, became a small argument against forces measured in miles. Then, as suddenly as it had formed, the system began to move on. The wind lost its edge. The rain thinned. Swells remained large but less organized. The aftermath of violence, not the violence itself. Gray light returned, and with it came the first true silence. The engine would not start. The radio remained dead. No land marked the horizon in any direction. Just water, endless and unbroken, stretching beyond curvature. The storm had not sunk them. It had erased their address. They were no longer fishermen in trouble. They were an object adrift in the largest body of water on Earth. And this was the moment escape became impossible. After the storm, the ocean did not calm. It simply stopped shouting. Long, slow swells rolled beneath the boat, lifting it gently, almost politely. The kind of motion that might feel peaceful under other circumstances. But peace here was only the absence of immediate violence. The system that had broken them was still in control. It was just no longer in a hurry. The engine remained silent. The radio lifeless. Alvarenga tried again anyway. Pull cord, adjust, check fuel line, repeat, mechanical ritual in the face of mechanical death. Cordoba watched, waiting for the familiar sound of ignition, the noise that meant direction, return, certainty. It never came. By mid-morning, the coastline had disappeared entirely. No brown strip, no birds flying toward land, no scent of earth in the wind, only a 360-degree horizon, sharp and indifferent. The world had reduced to two colors, blue and sky. At first, their minds held on to routine thinking. They would drift into shipping lanes, someone would spot them, boats broke down all the time. This was delay, not disaster. Alvarenga rationed supplies logically, as if solving a temporary inconvenience. Water, food, shade. But drifting is deceptive. You feel motion, yet go nowhere of your choosing. Hours pass without progress, like walking on a treadmill over an abyss. The boat turned slightly with each swell, never pointing long in one direction. Orientation dissolved. Even the sun climbing overhead offered no promise, only heat. By afternoon, thirst introduced itself. Not urgent, just present. Lips dried, tongues felt heavier, salt crusted on skin. The body began its quiet accounting. Cordoba asked when they would see land, not fearfully, just practically. Alvarenga did not answer right away. He scanned the horizon again, longer this time. Not searching, measuring. Because fishermen understand distance. He knew how far they had been pushed offshore before the storm fully took hold. He knew how currents could carry a powerless boat like a leaf in a river with no banks. He understood something Cordoba did not yet allow himself to see. Rescue requires location, and they no longer had one. That evening the sun lowered into a haze, swollen and red, its reflection stretching toward them like a road they could not walk. The boat rocked gently, too gently. The violence of the storm had been easier to fight. This stillness invited thoughts. Night fell without lights on the horizon. No distant engine hum. No blinking beacons. No aircraft crossing overhead. Just the slow slap of water against hull and the vast, breathing sound of open ocean. Cordoba lay back, staring upward, as if expecting the stars to arrange themselves into an answer. Alvarenga stayed seated, eyes on the dark water, because this was the moment the truth settled in, not like a blow, but like weight. They were not delayed. They were being carried away from the world of men, mile by silent mile, by forces too large to argue with and too patient to rush. They were no longer traveling. They were drifting into nowhere, and the body weakens fast. But the mind breaks first. Thirst does not begin as pain. It begins as distraction. The morning sun rose clean and merciless, burning away the thin cloud cover left behind by the storm. With no engine to generate shade, no cabin to retreat into, the boat became a shallow bowl of reflected heat. Light bounced off the water, struck skin from below and climbed into the eyes. By midday, their mouths felt coated in dust that did not exist. Alvarenga checked the remaining drinking water. Not enough. Not nearly enough. They had left shore expecting hours at sea, not weeks. Every sip now carried weight. Not comfort, but calculation. Drink now and weaken later. Wait and weaken sooner. The body began its rebellion quietly. Lips cracked at the edges. Saliva thickened. Urine darkened. Thoughts slowed, as if moving through heavy liquid. Cordoba spoke less. When he did, his voice sounded farther away than he was. Heat pressed down like a hand. By afternoon, dizziness came in waves. Stand too quickly and the world tilted. Focus too long, and vision shimmered. The ocean, endless and blue, offered no relief. Water everywhere, none to drink. This is the cruelty of the sea. It surrounds you with what you cannot use. They tried small measures, stretching fabric for shade, minimizing movement, breathing slowly. Survival became conservation. Every action was weighed against the water it would cost. Then the hallucinations began their quiet rehearsal. Shapes in the distance that dissolved when stared at. The sense of movement at the edge of vision. Cordoba once lifted his head suddenly, pointing toward what he thought was land. It was only a low cloud resting on the horizon. Hope misfired. By the second day without meaningful water, their bodies had shifted into emergency mode. Headaches pounded from inside the skull. Tongues felt swollen, too large for the mouth. Skin tightened over bone. Speech took effort. Alvarenga knew the math. A human body can go weeks without food. Without water, the clock runs brutally fast. Days, not weeks. Maybe less under sun like this. Evening approached, and with it, wind. At first, just a breeze, cool enough to raise goosebumps on overheated skin. Then clouds gathered again, thick but uneven like a ceiling being built in layers. The air changed texture, charged, waiting. Alvarenga looked up, not with fear this time, but with fragile anticipation. The first drop hit like a mistake, then another. Then the sky opened. Rain fell hard and cold, drumming against the hull, splashing into the boat, running down their faces. Cordoba laughed, a cracked, almost disbelieving sound. They moved with sudden, desperate purpose, grabbing every container they had. Plastic bottles, storage bins, even cupped hands. They tilted their heads back, mouths open, swallowing without dignity. Water ran into their eyes, down their throats, into life-starved cells. Pain followed, the body waking too fast. But it was the pain of survival. The sky had chosen not to kill them. Not yet. They stored what they could, sealing bottles like treasure chests. The boat smelled different now, fresher, alive with the scent of rain instead of salt and fear. But as the storm cell drifted away and the clouds thinned, a harder truth settled in with the returning stars. This had not been rescue. It had been mercy, temporary, unpromised. From now on, their survival would not depend on strength, skill, or planning. It would depend on whether the sky decided to open again. but water alone cannot keep a man alive. Water bought them time. Time demanded payment. Hunger does not strike like thirst. It advances slowly, a tightening emptiness, a hollow echo beneath the ribs. At first, the body feeds on what it carries. Stored fat, quiet reserves. But under sun, stress, and drifting, those reserves burn fast. By the third week, weakness had edges. Movements that once felt automatic now required intention. Standing too long brought tremors. Thoughts looped, losing sharpness. Their bodies were still alive, but no longer well. The ocean, however, was full. Fish flashed silver beneath the hull, indifferent to the human crisis above them. Birds circled occasionally, drawn by the boat's shadow, curious, opportunistic. Life surrounded them, abundant and unreachable by ordinary means. But ordinary means had already failed. Alvarenga made the shift first, not dramatically, not heroically, just practically. He had spent a lifetime reading water, understanding behavior, anticipating motion. Hunger sharpened those instincts into urgency. He leaned low over the side, still as a branch, waiting for fish drawn by shade. Timing replaced tools, patience replaced equipment. When he moved, it was sudden, a hand plunging into water, fingers closing on living muscle. The first catch was small, slippery, violent in the hand. He killed it quickly and brought it on board. There was no fire, no seasoning, no preparation that belonged to civilization, just flesh, salt, and survival. He bit into it, face tightening, body resisting before instinct overruled disgust. Protein is protein. Life is life. Cordoba watched. He tried. He truly did. He held the fish, stared at the raw meat, lifted it toward his mouth, and stopped. Something deeper than hunger intervened. A lifetime of learned boundaries, of what is food and what is not, rose like a wall inside him. He swallowed water instead. Birds became the next opportunity. They landed sometimes on the boat, resting without fear, too tired to flee quickly. Alvarenga moved with brutal efficiency, catching them by hand, breaking necks, using every part he could. Feathers stuck to skin. Blood dried in the sun. Each act carved away another layer of the person he had been on shore. Cordoba turned his head away. The boat no longer felt like a vessel. It felt like a floating boundary between two worlds. One where survival rewrites morality. One where the old rules still hold. Alvarenga crossed that boundary fully. He ate raw fish, raw bird. Later, sea turtles when chance allowed. Heavy, difficult, but rich with sustenance. He drank what he had to when rain was scarce. Did what the body required, not what the mind preferred. Strength returned to him slowly. Cordoba weakened. Hunger is not only physical, it is psychological. Each refusal made the next one easier. Each missed meal deepened the body's decline, and the mind's quiet surrender. He spoke less now, movements slower, eyes lingering on the horizon as if waiting for an answer he no longer believed in. Two men in the same boat, two different wars being fought, one against the ocean, the other against himself, and not everyone could cross that line. Death at sea is rarely dramatic. It is gradual, quiet, almost polite. By the fourth month, Cordoba's body had become a map of absence. Cheekbones sharpened, eyes sank inward, no longer scanning the horizon but drifting past it. His movements slowed to the rhythm of someone already halfway gone. He had eaten almost nothing. Alvarenga tried at first with patience. He offered pieces of fish, small portions, gentle encouragement. He spoke of rescue as a future certainty, not a fading possibility. But survival at sea is not only a test of endurance, it is a test of what a person can accept. Cordoba could not accept this version of life. One afternoon, under a sky bleached pale by heat, he spoke softly, not about hunger, not about land, but about home. Familiar streets, voices, food cooked with care. Memories arranged themselves in his mind like a doorway he preferred to walk through. Alvarenga listened. There was nowhere else to look. As days passed, Cordoba stopped trying to stand. He lay beneath the thin shade they had rigged, breathing shallowly, eyes open but unfocused. His body was still there. His will was retreating. The ocean remained unchanged. Swells rolled. Wind shifted. Sun rose and set with mechanical indifference. Nature did not mark the moment a human life began to slip away beside it. One morning, Cordoba did not respond when spoken to. Alvarenga waited, watched the chest, counted breaths that did not come. He touched his shoulder, gently at first, then firmer. The skin was warm, but empty of resistance. The largest ocean on Earth, a human life ended without witness. Silence expanded. For hours, Alvarenga stayed beside the body, speaking to it as if sound might anchor something that had already drifted beyond reach. The boat, once small for two men, now felt impossibly vast. Space had opened, not physical, but human. He faced a decision no one is prepared to make. Keeping the body meant decay, illness, a constant reminder of what survival costs. Letting go meant surrendering the last evidence that he had not imagined these months, that another voice had once answered his own. At dusk, with shaking hands, he slid Cordoba into the water. The ocean closed without ceremony. No marker, no grave, no record but memory. And then there was only one set of footprints left on the floor of the boat. One shadow at sunset, one voice in the dark. Isolation did not begin that day. It became absolute. And then, the silence doubled. After Cordoba was gone, the boat did not feel emptier. It felt larger. Silence expanded into every corner, filling space where another breathing body had once been. Before, even despair had been shared, divided between two minds. Now every thought echoed without resistance, growing louder the longer it remained unanswered. The ocean had taken the only witness to his existence. Days no longer arrived in sequence. They blurred. Morning and afternoon became distinctions of light, not time. Without conversation, without tasks beyond survival, the mind began to unmoor itself. Alvarenga started speaking aloud. At first it was practical, narrating actions, organizing thought, check lines, save water, watch birds. But language, deprived of reply, seeks its own reflection. Soon he was answering himself, then arguing, then remembering conversations that were no longer happening. Memory became company. Faces surfaced uninvited, family, friends, people from years past. Their voices sounded close enough to touch, layered over the wind and water. He would turn, expecting to see someone beside him, only to find empty air and open sea. Sleep fractured. Dreams bled into waking hours. Sometimes he could not tell which was which. The boundary between inner world and outer reality thinned, like worn fabric under constant strain. The mind, deprived of normal stimulus, began generating its own. This is how isolation hunts. Not with teeth, with absence. Yet the body still required action. Fish still needed catching. Rain still needed collecting. Survival tasks became anchors, small, repetitive rituals that kept his mind tied loosely to the present. Without them, thought drifted into places too deep to return from. He began assigning roles to the world around him. The sun was an adversary, watching without blinking. The wind carried moods. The sea itself felt alive, not conscious but responsive, as if testing him, waiting for him to fail. In loneliness, nature does not feel neutral. It feels personal. Sometimes he spoke to Cordoba, apologizing, explaining decisions that could no longer be changed. Guilt and memory braided together, forming conversations that lasted hours. Grief did not arrive as tears. It arrived as repetition, the same thoughts circling, searching for an ending that did not exist. Time stretched beyond meaning. Weeks might have passed, months. Without calendar or clock, survival reduced life to cycles. Heat, thirst, hunger, night. Existence became biological, not human. But somewhere beneath exhaustion and fractured thought, one instinct held firm. Do not give up, not hope. That had become dangerous, not belief, that shifted with the sky. Just movement, action, the refusal to lie down and let the ocean finish what it started. Because once the body stops, the mind follows. and loneliness became louder than the waves. Rescue does not always save you. Sometimes it wounds. Months had passed, how many he could no longer measure, when the illusion returned. A shape on the horizon. At first, Alvarenga did not trust his eyes. The ocean had played tricks before, bending light, stacking clouds into false coastlines. But this was different. Hard lines, movement against the swell. A ship. His body reacted before thought could interfere. He stood too fast, dizziness flashing white across his vision. He waved clothing, shouted until his throat burned, slammed metal against metal to make noise. Every signal he could invent, he sent toward that distant geometry of civilization. The ship remained steady, close enough to confirm, too far to hear him. Hope surged like oxygen after suffocation. He imagined water, voices, shade, the impossible relief of being seen. His heart beat not with fear, but with return. The ship passed, not turning, not slowing. A floating city, blind to the small drama playing out beside its route. Within minutes it shrank into a gray mark, then into nothing. The silence afterward was heavier than any storm. Because despair born from certainty is different from despair born from loss. Before, rescue had been an abstract possibility. Now it had been visible, reachable, and gone. Hope had sharpened the fall. He lay on the deck for hours, staring upward, letting the sun burn without protest. Not from surrender, from emptiness. The mind, having climbed toward rescue, now had to descend again into endurance. Each climb made the next harder, and it happened again. Another vessel, another distant engine hum carried over water on a still afternoon. He tried different signals, reflections from metal, gestures, shouts that tore his throat raw. The ship shifted slightly on the horizon, and for a moment he believed with full, dangerous intensity, that it had seen him. It hadn't. Civilization moved along invisible highways across the ocean. He was not on them. He was debris between routes outside the map. After the second near rescue, something inside him changed. Not collapse, adaptation. He learned to mute hope, to treat distant shapes as weather, not salvation. Expect nothing. React only to what touches the boat. It was a survival strategy of the mind, because unchecked hope can kill faster than hunger. It drains energy, fractures focus, opens emotional wounds the body cannot afford to carry. Better to endure flatly than rise and fall with each illusion. The sea remained endless, the sky indifferent. Ships passed through his world like ghosts through walls, visible, untouchable, gone. Rescue came close enough to hurt. The ocean changes color before it changes fate. After more than a year adrift, though he did not know the number, Alvarenga noticed something different in the water beneath the boat. The deep, endless blue had softened, shifting toward green. Subtle, easy to dismiss, but fishermen read color the way others read road signs. Green meant shallower currents, shallower meant land, somewhere. He did not stand immediately. He had seen too much that wasn't there. Clouds shaped like cliffs, light stacked into false coastlines. Hope had burned him before, but the birds came next. Not the wide-ranging ocean birds that followed boats for scraps. These flew with purpose, low and direct, carrying something in their beaks. Twigs, leaves, life that did not grow at sea. His heart began to beat differently. Not fast, not wild. Heavy, careful. The horizon sharpened as the day lifted. A thin, dark line appeared where water met sky. It did not vanish when he blinked. It did not shift with cloud. It held. Land. Or the most convincing hallucination yet. He moved toward it slowly, using what little control currents allowed. The boat drifted closer, the line thickening, separating into shapes. Palms, sand, stillness that did not move with the swell. The smell reached him before the shore did. Earth, vegetation, something alive that was not salt or decay. After months of sterile ocean air, the scent felt unreal, like memory made physical. The boat scraped bottom. The sound was soft, almost gentle, but it cut through him like thunder. Solid ground beneath drifting wood. The motion that had defined his existence for over a year suddenly stopped. He tried to stand and fell. His legs, long adapted to the unstable floor of the boat, did not understand stillness. He crawled instead, hands sinking into wet sand, fingers gripping earth as if it might dissolve. Waves washed over him, retreating, returning, the ocean making one last attempt to reclaim him. But land held. Palm trees rose overhead, indifferent witnesses to a man crawling out of the sea like something returned from another age. No crowds, no cameras, just wind through leaves and the sound of his own breathing, ragged and disbelieving. He had imagined this moment countless times, dramatic, triumphant, loud. Instead, it was quiet. Survival had not ended in victory music. It ended in collapse, face pressed against sand, body too weak to celebrate, mind too stunned to process. The ocean, which had held him for more than a year, had finally released its grip. After more than a year, the sea finally let go. Rescue did not arrive like salvation. It arrived like confusion. When people from the atoll found him, they did not see a legend. They saw a man reduced to bone and salt, skin darkened by sun, hair matted, eyes carrying a distance that did not match the beach beneath his feet. He tried to speak, but language felt foreign. Sounds shaped by a world he had not lived in for over a year. Hands touched him carefully as if he might break. Fresh water was given in small amounts. Food, slowly. Shade. Voices. Too many voices. Each one pulled at his attention, demanding recognition. Civilization returned all at once, and his mind struggled to keep pace. Because survival at sea simplifies existence. Return complicates it. On the boat, life had reduced to 4 questions: water, food, shelter, endurance. On land, the questions multiplied. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you live? Why did the other man die? He answered when he could, fell silent when he could not. Nights were the hardest. Without the rocking motion of waves, sleep felt wrong, as if the ground itself were unstable. He woke expecting darkness without walls, stars overhead, wind against skin. Instead, there were roofs, voices, light switches. Safety felt unnatural. The body recovered faster than the mind. Weight returned, strength followed. But memory did not loosen its grip. The ocean remained present, in dreams, in sudden flashes of sound, in the instinct to scan horizons that no longer existed. He had left the water, but the water had not left him. People would later measure his survival in days. In distance drifted. In records, they would call it extraordinary, historic, almost impossible. But survival is not triumph. It is continuation. He had endured storms, thirst, hunger, loneliness beyond design. He had crossed the line where a human being becomes only instinct and will, and he had come back carrying something invisible, the knowledge of how thin the boundary is between civilization and the void. The ocean had not tried to kill him. It had simply not cared whether he lived. That is its power. That is its truth. Because sometimes the body comes home, and the mind is still out there, drifting between water and sky.